The reason for Pete's aversion to floor duty had to do with something peculiar about auditorium number 2. I began working part-time at a local movie theater about 5 years ago. The cinema staff had 3 main responsibilities: ticket sales, concession stand duty, and floor tasks, including assisting patrons entering and exiting the auditorium while keeping the auditorium clean. Typically, we take turns performing these 3 tasks, but there was one staff member, Pete, who insisted on working exclusively at the concession stand. He spent most of his shifts there and earned the nickname Popcorn Pete. Especially on days when it was his turn to work on the floor tasks, he would stubbornly swap shifts with other staff members. The reason for Pete's aversion to floor duty had to do with something peculiar about auditorium number 2. Each auditorium has its temperature monitored to ensure it's at the optimal temperature for viewing experiences, typically around 65 degrees Fahrenheit. However, strangely, every time you stepped into auditorium number 2, it felt unusually cold, even though the temperature gauge indicated a normal reading. This gave you an eerie feeling. Even though the gauge displayed the correct room temperature, your spine would tingle and you'd feel an unsettling shiver. This led to a chilling rumor that the place where auditorium number 2 was located had a grim history. The place on which the auditorium number 2 was built was originally a shopping mall. However, when the decision was made by the investors to convert it into a movie theater, the existing shop owners protested vehemently. They went to great lengths to obstruct construction, even staging night-long protests inside their shops. They took turns guarding the premises at night, vowing to protect their shops from demolition. But one day, it was the turn of the woman who owned a clothing store. However, a fateful day arrived when this woman decided to take a break, but ended up falling asleep at the site. Seizing the opportunity, the construction workers believed the protest had ended and began demolishing the shops within the mall, burying this woman alive. The place where she lay down was none other than auditorium number 2. I, however, dismissed this tale as mere fiction, thinking they were probably made up by someone just for fun. One evening I was assigned to the closing shift, which meant I would be working late into the night. The responsibilities of floor duty included checking patrons' tickets at the admission, and once the movie begins, I check for the quality of the screen and sounds, and ensure the auditorium's temperature was comfortable. 5 minutes before the movie ends, I would enter the auditorium, ready to open the exit doors when the movie finishes and assist patrons in exiting the auditorium number 2. On this particular night, auditorium number 2 was on my list. As the last movie was about to begin, a couple entered, and from then on it seemed there was no one else coming in. With no more tasks to attend to, I discreetly pulled out my phone and started browsing. But then something happened. A woman suddenly appeared right in front of me, standing practically nose to nose. I was taken aback but proceeded to inspect her ticket. Confirmed for the 12:15 a.m. show. Enjoy your movie. It was strictly against the rules to use cell phones during the shift, and I felt a little nervous. Concerned about potential complaints, I decided to be extra courteous to this lady. As she entered the auditorium, I couldn't help but notice that she was dressed in very outdated clothes, something from decades ago. A short while later, I confirmed that the movie had begun, closed the door, and then reported the head count via a radio. This step was crucial to cross-check with the number of tickets sold, in case someone tried to sneak in without a valid ticket. "Calling office," I radioed. "This is the last movie in auditorium number 2. No issues with the play, sound, and the temperature is normal. It's a bit cold inside. There are 3 patrons." I received a female voice over the radio.
Okay.
It was just 5 minutes until the last movie in auditorium number 2 would end. I quietly entered the room, prepared to assist with the exit process. As I waited for the end, I happened to glance at the audience seats and realized something odd. There was a couple, and one more woman. It seemed strange that the woman came alone, especially at this late hour. Even more peculiar was that she was drenched in sweat, and her face was dripping with moisture, as if she had been perspiring profusely. Even though the film was terrifying, the extent of her sweating seemed too excessive. I glanced at the movie screen for a moment, and there was this woman's face filling the entire screen. It was as if her face was superimposed onto the screen. I questioned whether it was some sort of optical illusion, so I turned to look at the woman, only to find her vanished. When I redirected my gaze to the screen, her face was still on the screen. I couldn't fathom why her face was on the screen, which left me thoroughly perplexed. My attention then shifted to the audience seats where a couple sat, seemingly unaffected, engrossed in the film. I assumed it was all part of the movie, but I couldn't understand why this peculiar scene was dragging on. Confusion gripped me as I stared blankly at the woman's face on the screen. Suddenly, a red fluid, almost like blood, started dripping from her forehead between strands of hair. Her gaze, fixed straight ahead, abruptly locked onto me, as if her eyes had been adjusted like spotlights on a stage. I was startled and found myself frozen in place, unable to move. I questioned whether this was actually part of the movie or if it was some sort of visual trickery. No matter how hard I tried to make sense of it, it all felt absurd. The scene on the screen then shifted, revealing the back of a man, and I soon realized it was me. Just as I grasped that this scene was from someone else's viewpoint and turned to check behind me, I felt someone's hand gripping my cheeks, forcing me to face the screen once more. What I saw on the screen was the back of a woman with her hands grabbing my face from behind. With great effort, I managed to wrench my head around, and what I beheld was profoundly shocking, a disfigured woman's face covered in blood. At that moment, someone called my name, and the manager stood before me, yelling at me for not opening the exit door as the movie had already ended. I apologized instantly, only then realizing that the lights were on, and the screen had gone dark. The couple had been waiting for a while to exit, while I had remained standing there, completely oblivious, staring blankly at the screen. The couple had likely complained to the manager about my behavior. The manager, in response, continued yelling at me and questioned why I hadn't responded to the radio. I asked him to clarify what he meant by not responding to the radio. The manager pointed out that I had reported 3 head counts, but the actual tickets sold were only 2. He even warned me that if this kind of behavior continued, I might lose my job. I was completely puzzled by this situation. While everything had left me bewildered, I distinctly remembered hearing a female voice over the radio acknowledge with a "okay" when I reported the head count. However, an unsettling realization began to sink in. There were no female staff members in the office that day, not a single one. Moreover, the standard response to confirm a report was "over and out," not an "okay." I quickly apologized to the manager and left auditorium with heavy steps. I soon found myself sitting on the floor, utterly drained. As I sat there, Popcorn Pete from the concession stand approached me and made a shocking statement.
You saw it too, didn't you? That woman.
Was that the mysterious woman who had supposedly lost her life on this very spot, auditorium number 2? Was this the reason why Popcorn Pete avoided working on floor tasks?
Okay.